have a meeting with the Commission. You know that we wrote a few days ago requesting a meeting with the Commission to discuss the various issues which we consider important that should be addressed in going forward. And we have received an indication from the Commission that at 2 p.m. They will meet with us. So after the meeting in the afternoon, I will apprise you of the outcome of that discussion. We would have concluded by yesterday 1 week of the national recount exercise. We would have concluded the recount of just below 10% of the ballot boxes of the total, and a few consistent trends have emerged, and I'm sure that you are aware of it, but it's necessary sometimes to highlight these things. Firstly, the first week has produced consistently the matching of the ballots in the ballot box with the statements of poll. And that's a significant fact that we cannot overemphasize. Secondly, the process has produced a very clear trend in relation to Mingo's tabulation. And that trend is that the figures that Mr. Mingo used in his tally sheet or spreadsheet were fraudulent. And the fraud in itself shows a consistency. And that consistency is, as revealed by the recount, is that hundreds of votes were consistently taken from the PPPC and given to the APNU AFC. And that perhaps, well, not perhaps, that is clearly why the APNU AFC is so forceful in their defense of Mingo, and that is why the commissioners representing the government on the commission have argued so emphatically for Mingo's declaration to be retained and held in abeyance, because it obviously is the instrumentality through which they are claiming victory. Another important observation that one can make after 1 week of appraisal is that the strategy of the APNU AFC has failed abysmally, and that strategy is one to denounce and criticize election day's activities. That strategy has failed abysmally in the sense that it has not picked up traction anywhere. It has not picked up traction anywhere, and it has failed to detract from the actual numbers that the boxes are disclosing. And those are the numbers, and it is the numbers, that will at the end of the day have preeminent value. Their attempts to expand this process to one of an audit has also abysmally failed, because it is not an audit, and no sensible person following the national recount exercise is viewing it from that perspective. So I think at this point in time, after 1 week, the APNU and AFC should consider whether they should not abandon that propagandistic streak that they have embarked upon and cooperate with the process so that we can conclude it quickly, and do not continue to subject the country to the turmoil and agony that I see we are descending into, especially Last night, for the first time, for example, I looked at some of the videos and I read some of the commentaries of the persons who are looking at our review here, and I'm sure they're doing it now. And people are very unhappy, people are very sad. I see mental turmoil, I see agony, I see suffering, I see emotional trauma. And the people of our country should not be subjected to that. Political leaders should not allow their supporters and our Guyanese people to engage in such type of self-flagellation. The people just beating themselves up in frustration because their leaders are not coming clean and telling them the truth. And I believe that as responsible politicians, we have reached that stage of the process after 1 week. The further it goes on, it will not change. In fact, it will get worse. And people will become unhappier. And they will beat up themselves further, cursing and abusing people when they speak here. Why? All I am doing is reporting what the process is yielding and revealing. But because politicians are poisoning people's minds with misrepresentations and lies, and are misleading people and giving them false hope and false confidence, you see the effect of it reflected in your daily telecast and televiews of these interviews. And that's not fair to those people, and politicians should rise above that kind of behavior and don't subject our Guyanese people to such level of cruelty. I want to also express our disappointment with GECOM's, well, first of all, we welcome GECOM's decision to expand the number of stations. But we are not happy, we are critical rather, of GECOM's decision to invite the COVID task force to advise them. I have remarked before, both orally and in writing and in great details, that GECOM is a constitutional, autonomous, independent body. And under the Constitution, and you can go and look at it for yourself, Article 226 says that commissions of the type like GECOM are not subject to the direction, are not subject to the instructions of any other authority or body of persons. Even if the COVID task force was differently constituted, and it was in fact a competent body of professionals, it would have been improper for the GECOM to cede its independence to that task force. What makes it worse is the constitution of this particular task force. The task force is headed by Mr. Harman, a politician, Mr. Nagamotu, a politician, Ms. Lawrence, Father Lawrence, a politician, Cummings, a politician, all of whom are political leaders of the APNU AFC. They are an active participant in this process. And in their participation in the process, they have adopted a particular posture of delay and frustration. And this is the authority to which GECOM is going to turn for advice on COVID protocols. What type of advice you think they will get? They will get advice that will not, I believe, augur well for the process. The advice might be, don't open more stations in their efforts to delay, derail and dilate in the process. So I consider that decision of GECOM to be quite unfortunate, and we will raise it at the meeting. The judiciary, an organization and an institution of state that is similarly circumstanced constitutionally, like the GECOM, has established its own protocol. The judiciary has COVID protocols, but it did not depend or rely upon the COVID task force. it did so as an independent body by itself. I also want to reference the Court of Appeal ruling in the case, in the appeal filed by Yulita Moore. Remember, the Court of Appeal said that CARICOM high-level team cannot supervise GECOM in this exercise. Why? Because GECOM is an independent constitutional body that must act independently and on its own volition. It is the same reason GECOM cannot subject itself to the directions of the COVID task force. So we hope that we hope to raise that issue at the meeting, and hopefully we are able to persuade GECOM that it can have its own health personnel and own technical people who are devoid of political stigma and attachment to guide it through the process. We don't want GECOM to violate any international or national health standards. That's not our intention. But we don't want the process to be the subject of political pollution and contamination. So we will raise that, and hopefully we get GECOM to, we are able to persuade GECOM against that course of action.
Mr. Nandalal, with respect to the approval of additional pumping stations and the COVID measures that are in place, initially there were supposed to be around 150 persons in the convention center, because even the CARICOM team had expressed concerns about the number of persons that would have been assembled there and their security, right? And that is their health risk and security risk. Now we have around 400 people at this conference center here involved in the recount, right? Which is again against one of the measures of the COVID measures that is gazetted, you know, about assembling and congregating. Are you saying that the health of the persons involved here in Guyanese are to take a second seat as against arriving at a result?
Let me assure you that the PPP will and has always and will continue to give the highest priority to the safety and well-being and welfare of Guyanese in any situation. This situation is no different. We are guided by PAHO health standards, by WHO guidelines. As far as we are aware, the arrangements here are in compliance with those international guidelines. The CARICOM, we had to satisfy, GECOM had to satisfy CARICOM that they are compliant, they are in compliance with CARICOM accepted promulgated guidelines in relation to COVID. So as far as I am aware, there is no arrangement currently in place that is in violation of any recognized international guidelines vis-a-vis COVID-19. I personally don't pay much attention to the task force, simply because a task force of that type should never be overburdened with the presence of so many politicians. These are people who have no training, no professional and technical expertise in public care, public health care management, or public health period, or even medicine. Walter Lawrence, Joe Harmon, Moses Nagamutu are politicians, career politicians. What training they have to be part of such an important task force? You should have the GMA and those people, Guyana Medical Council, GMC, and technically qualified people in the area heading technical task force of such a type. So I don't know that this process, of which I consider myself to be a part, is in any way violative of any international health standards and health requirements.
My clarification from it, are you understanding that the visit today will be technical persons from the public health system, or is it members of the direct task force? What are you understanding?
I don't know. I don't know, but I know that the task force is headed by politicians, and the management of COVID-19 has nothing to do with management. It's a process and an engagement that should involve people who are qualified and technically trained to administer this type of engagement. I don't know that Harman, Nagamoto, Cummings, and Lawrence are so qualified or competent.
They're looking at an additional 5 compensation possibly.
Yes.
Which will give us another 100 or so persons in the facility, which will take us to around 500,000 persons. Are you concerned that
500,000 persons?
Sorry, 500 persons. Are you concerned that that much persons are gathered or will be gathered in one place on a daily basis for a lengthy time?
Sir, you can have people gathering. The number of persons gathered is not the issue. It's the space apart and the equipment of masks, etc. The number of times that they cleanse their person, and those are the requirements as I understand them. They are not, it has, number of persons in a particular location is not the deciding factor. It's the space apart and the type of interaction in which they are engaged. Those are the more important criteria that guide a process and determine the suitability of a location. And I am sure that those who are here, the CARICOM people, are not going to jeopardize their welfare unnecessarily. Neither would so many people, and I'm sure GECOM is going to be guided by the proper protocols. That is why I'm saying to you, that the task force, the COVID task force of Guyana, is not an entity qualified to pronounce on matters of such technical nature. Thank you very much.